Hi everyone, my name is Zoe and I'm going to talk about democratic principles and free expression. All the numbers in this presentation are based on a report which is itself based on interviews in 38 countries. So it compares public opinion from a country to another. Indeed, democratic rights are universal values, but they can be defined and classed differently. Most people from these 38 countries agreed that it is important to live in a country which supports democratic rights. First of all, we have to ask ourselves a question. What are these democratic rights we are talking about? For all the people survived in the 38 countries, it includes religious freedom, free press, free speech, and competitive elections, which means when at least two parties are involved. And for all of them, except in Burkina Faso, it also includes gender equality and free use of internet. Now, the second question is, which ones among these rights are the most important? Religious freedom seems to be at least the most universally shared, because 74% of people survived in the 38 countries think it is very important. Gender equality and competitive elections are coming just after, with 64% of people thinking it is very important. There is less intense support for the freedom of expression, even if it is still 50%. However, these are average statistics and it is relative. Indeed, if we look at each country separately, the proportions can be very different. For example, if the right to worship freely is strongly claimed in sub-Saharan Africa by 87% of the population, and in the United States with 84% of the population, only 24% of Japanese citizens think it is very important. Moreover, in Europe and Latin America, gender equality is even more important than religious freedom for 80% of the population. But the nationality is not the only characteristic to differentiate people who support a right more than another. For example, people for whom religion is very important personally are the most supportive of religious freedom. And in most countries, women are more likely than men to say gender equality is very important. The report also shows that, globally, people with higher levels of education and with higher incomes are more supportive of all democratic rights. Now, let's focus on the rights related to free expressions. It englobes three values: free press, free speech, and free use of internet. We saw that about a half of survived people think these three rights are very important. But there are different conceptions of what free expression is and what its boundaries should be. When it comes to public speech, a global median of 80% of people think that anybody should be able to criticize the government, while only 35% of people allow speech which can be offensive to minorities or to religious belief. And even less people are supporting the right to say publicly things which are sexually explicit. Some countries are more supportive of free expression. According to the report, Americans are the most supportive of free speech and free press, which means they are also the more tolerant with all kinds of speech. Indeed, 95% of Americans think people should be able to publicly criticize the government policies. And while the global median was 35%, respectively 77% and 67% of Americans tolerate offensive speech to religious groups and minorities. The American statistics about people allowing sexually explicit speech and calls for violent protest are also a lot more than the global median. I am an exchange student from France, and I had the opportunity to see how strongly Americans are supporting free speech. At the beginning of the semester, a student preacher was standing nearby the library and campus, and he was yelling at people. He was calling women with short shorts and tank tops whores, and he was condemning homosexuality. And I saw an article in which students, even though they strongly disagreed with him, so this preacher was perfectly allowed to say that. And it was very surprising for me because in France, we are not supposed to express publicly any sign of our religious beliefs. And somebody saying that kind of offensive things publicly would have been arrested by campus security very quickly. So I can tell Americans seem to support free speech no matter what. When it comes to press, most people also think the government should not interfere in publications. A global median of 78% of people support the right for press to call for protest against the government. Vietnam is the only country where less than 50% of people agreed. It is more divided concerning information which might destabilize the country's economy. There is still a majority of 59% of people supporting that kind of publications, but in 10 countries, more than 50% of people disagree. The balance changed for issues related to national security. Only 40% of people support the freedom to publish these informations, and it is more than 50% in only 13 countries. But once again, the national shades are not the only ones. In each country, the report shows that people the most supportive for free expression are also the most supportive for allowing controversial speech. Educated people and young people are more tolerant to critiques about the government, to sexually explicit speech, and to publications concerning national security issues. And of course, people directly affected by offensive speech are the more likely to disapprove them. Finally, young generations and users are the most supportive of the right to use internet freely, even if the report shows that most people think it is important. Well, thank you for your attention, and these are my credits.